I am curious about God's reasons for being hidden, because that's one of my biggest issues with God.
Well, in that case, welcome Kenny in Oklahoma, who wants to give God's reasons for being hidden, and that's what Dave wants to talk about. So welcome, Kenny. Thank you.
Hi, and hi, Dave. Appreciate you a
Hi,
lot.
Kenny.
I'm sorry for the trials that you're under, or trial that you're under now with your health and everything, and very
Thank you.
sympathetic towards that. And
Thank you.
I'm a theist and a Christian, and one of the things that God is, he's constantly helping me out with is that when I have a personal doubt or someone has a question that challenges me and things happen in my life and I want to know what's going on, God usually directs me towards a book. And I was really thought of this, looking at this hiddenness of God aspect, and the academic gentleman, don't remember his name, very long last name with an S, that came up with this argument and published it, and everyone made a big deal out of it. And it seemed to really bother people. And it was being used, of course, by Matt and others, and hi, Matt, and
Hi.
to as a reason why, you know, God's not being much of a God. And so I ran across this book by Richard Elliott Freeman called The Hidden Face of God. It used to be titled The Disappearance of God, because when the phrase in the Hebrew, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, is stated, it's actually saying, why did you disappear? You were here a moment ago. Now you're not with me when I need you the most, kind of a deal. That was the implication of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So well, the way that I look at all this is that sometimes, like Elijah was prepared for Jezebel to be pursuing him and come after him, everything, he wanted to hear from God, and he got a still small voice. But that's a Hebrew idiom that the wind just blew by. God didn't speak to him. God wasn't in the still small voice. He didn't get reassurance from God. And the reason he didn't and was left alone is because God had already prepared him at the sacrifice that he just did miraculously, calling down fire that licked up everything at the altar and melted everything at the altar, even after it was doused with water. So he had that miracle as his foundation to face Jezebel, who he was terrified of and ran away and hid himself from.
Kenny, I don't understand.
God,
yeah, I don't understand how this settles the issue of God's hiddenness. You know, you can talk about what. No, hang on. You can talk about what you think God did for Elijah. I don't have any evidence that there is a God. I don't have any evidence that this story about Elijah is true, or that Elijah ever experienced a witness or a miracle or any of those things. But you're reading all of the book and just taking it at face value. So for you, divine hiddenness isn't a big deal. Just like for you, I would imagine that original sin and things aren't a big deal, you know, in the sense of a problem for human beings. So what I'm wondering is this. My argument, or you know, when we're talking about this, when we look at Schellenberg's original argument, that's the name you're thinking of for divine hiddenness.
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, I had to. Sorry, my blood glucose just went through the ceiling, and so I wanted to check it real quick. No, I'm absolutely fine. It beeps on my monitor. So the issue of God's hiddenness has nothing to do with an individual who was prepared otherwise. It is God's hiddenness from everyone and everything all the time. Why, you know, why isn't God? Why did you have to call in, Kenny? Why can't God call in? And you said early in the call that when you have issues, God seems to direct you to a book. I would love for you to explain how you know that God has directed you to anything, let alone a book.
Well, because it's the right book that when he directs me to one.
How do you know he directed you to it? The fact that you found a book and it was right doesn't mean that a God directed you to anything. That's what you have to prove. If you're going to say God directs you to a book, you have to show us how you know that he did it.
Well, I'm well aware of the hiddenness of God issue being as universal as you're talking about. My point that I was about to conclude with, before you ask your question, is simply that it's God hides himself purposely, and it's in the Bible, and there's reasons why he does it. And so it's not a big mystery that he hides himself. It's how he works.
So what you're saying, Kenny, is you're not going to answer my questions. That's what you're saying.
No, I'll answer your question.
Okay.
4 questions. Okay, you had one question. Let's see, what was it?
How do you know?
Why doesn't God show up?
How did you know that it's God that directed you to a book?
Right. Okay, let's answer that one.
Because I asked God, I need a book because I don't know. And this started in OBU when I had an atheist roommate that was our high school chess champion. I couldn't answer all his objections to Christianity. And
Kenny,
so I asked God to show me a book.
Kenny,
and from that point on, I got books.
Kenny,
and I answered them all and got saved.
I'm sorry, Kenny, but the fact that you said Kenny, the fact that you said God direct me to a book and you found a book doesn't mean that God directed you to a book any more than you said, God, take away my headache, means that God cured you of your headache.
And so it doesn't matter how the circumstance turned out when the purpose of getting the book was to say.
Correct. You have to show, that God, Kenny, you have to show that God did it. If you prayed for God to take away your headache and your headache went away, do you think it's reasonable to conclude that God took away your headache?
Not necessarily, no.
Correct. And the same thing must be true for you asking for a book, right?
If it happens every time I have a headache.
Okay, Kenny. Okay, then this is Kenny. Then this is easy. No. Everybody stop. This is easy. Kenny, listen to me. I want you to go ask God to point you to a book with a specific message that will change my mind. And call me back when God points you to that book. And don't call me back until that happens.
Kenny, can I ask you something?
No, because Kenny's gone.
Oh, shit. I don't I mean, the hit, just so frustrating.
Yeah,
those are frustrating calls.
We hit the 6 o'clock hour. And one of the nice things is that Kenny recognized that, hey, I prayed and my headache went away. That doesn't mean God did it. But Kenny is convinced that, hey, every time I ask God for a book, God gives me a book, or he finds just the right book.
Well,
now, maybe
it's interesting to me that God can give Kenny a book to read, but he can't save a young girl who's being raped and tortured when she cries out to God, and God remains hidden to her. But God's going to give Kenny a book he's looking for. Fuck me.
That's why we didn't continue. Kenny needs to ask his God what message he should deliver and what book he should point to. And when that happens, we'll still have to ask.
Book, Matt.
Yeah, we're not going to. But what happens then is that we will still get nowhere.